Okay, well, I'll just go through some interesting things that I tell my classes sometimes. I teach chemistry and geology, but they like interesting sciencey things or things about the real world. So let's run through a couple here. Let's see if I can get my slides going. Okay, well, I looked up, I read some stuff about demographics, and so I've got some images of demographics from the U.S. Census Bureau. Anyways, for different countries around the world. This is for Canada 2014. And so the blue is the males, the pink is the females, and the horizontal axis here is the numbers of millions of different age groups. And so from 0 to 4 years old, there are around 1 million males and around 1 million females. Anyways, and so from the shape of this thing, you can probably see that there's an awful lot of people ages around 50 to 60 or so. And so this is the baby boom. And so a lot of babies were born there. Now, a generation is about 24 years-ish. And so when the baby boomers had their kids, they'd be about 24 years different. And so you can look down here around 25 years later, and you should see another boom. And that's called the Echo generation. Anyways, the baby bust happened after, in the 60s, I guess, the big bust. And that's when birth control pills were established, I guess, or invented and became popular. Anyways, in the baby bust. And so, boom, bust, Echo generation is these guys. And then I guess these are the Gen Xers. I don't know if that's the Gen Xers or Gen Y, I don't know. They got so many different names for generations now. I'm not entirely sure. But the baby busters didn't have very many kids either. And so there weren't very many of them, and as a result, 25 years later, there's not very many kids of their, of their progeny. Anyways, and so why is it all important? Well, they get a year older, and so that was 2014, and so if I could just pick this stuff up and say, okay, well, they're all a year older, now they're a year older, year older, year older, year older. And so that's how this thing's going to work. And so what I'm suggesting to you is that people of various ages, generally speaking, now I know there's exceptions, but generally speaking, people buy specific things or spend their money on specific things at specific times or ages. And so when you're late teens to early 20s, you're going to spend money on education, maybe buy a cheap vehicle. In your early 20s or mid 20s, you'd live in urban or rental housing. In your 30s, you start to move out into the suburbs, and so that's these guys here, and spend money on a suburb house, so big house in the suburbs. And by your mid-40s and a little later, you start to spend money on financial services, trying to think about retirement, that kind of thing. Just prior to retirement, you renovate your house. Maybe you buy an expensive car or something like that, or just before retirement, or just at the end of when you begin to retire. And then I suppose in your retirement years, early retirement years at least, you spend money on travel and entertainment. And then eventually, in your 70s, you start thinking about retirement housing. And eventually in your 80s and so on, you start thinking about old age homes, hospice care towards, in your late 80s and 90s. And I suppose eventually you have to think about funeral care. And so that's what people of different ages, generally speaking, spent their money on. And so if you have one of these businesses, what does your customer base look like? Well, they get a year older every year. And so a year older, a year older, a year older, what are they spending their money on? So maybe you can see that the customer base for retirement housing is increasing dramatically over the next, many years. And so right now we're around 2014. Well, no, actually it's 2017 right now, so we're in around something like that. And so you can see that right here at retirement housing, you've got an increasing population base for your customers. And so a lot of increase in your customer base. However, in terms of house renovations and financial services, maybe your customer base is dropping off because of the baby bust. And I suppose in terms of cheap vehicle sales, your customer base is dropping off precipitously. Anyways, and so think about that in terms of what should you invest money in? What does your customer base look like as they age? And obviously, you're not going to go well up beyond 100. So, also think about this: people, when they're young, really don't pay into the public coffers. They don't pay very much in taxes, and so when you're early ages, you incur hospital costs and public education, but from the age of 5 right up to the age of maybe 17 or 18. And generally speaking, up until your early 20s, you really aren't paying much, if anything, in taxes. You are a net loss in terms of finances. You're a net cost on society. It's people from ages 35 to 55 who are paying the majority of taxes because they're the largest wage earners. They're hopefully gainfully employed by the time they're in their 30s. And by the time they're in their 50s, they are earning the greatest wages they'll ever do, and they're paying a lot of taxes. And right now, the people that are in their 50s are right at the baby boom. And I guess we're getting towards the tail end of the baby boom, but there are a lot of taxes coming in right now. However, into retirement, your income drops substantially, and so now you start to draw government pensions. And eventually, and your taxes are diminishing, and so you're not really contributing, certainly not as much, to the public coffers. And they're increasingly, as you get older, there becomes more public costs, and so these people pay the taxes, they pay the bills for the country. Those people cost the country, and the young people cost the country. And so what happens to them? Well, if you look at the ages as they get older and older and older, over the next several years, and so again, it's 2017, so we're about here-ish. And so over the next several years, the tail end of the baby boomers are going to be leaving their tax-paying years, and, well, their large tax-paying years. And so they're going to start to cost society, and there's fewer and fewer and fewer people coming up behind them to pay those taxes. And so that's going to have an impact on, Canadian society and world society as well. And fewer costs on the tax system or on the government coffers for young people. However, there's still not very many people paying taxes compared to the baby boomers who are going to be costing us money. And of course, obviously, it tails into 100. So, yeah, something like that. So keep that in mind in terms of what should you invest your money in, and who pays the taxes, and who's costing society. So let's just look at a few other nations. And so this is a comparison between Canada and the United States. And so there's Canada's demographics. Here's the U.S. The U.S. had a baby boom and a baby bust in the 60s because of the advent of the pill, birth control. And then a pretty strong, a much stronger echo generation than Canada had. And then again, when the baby busters started to have kids, there weren't very many of them, and so there's another bust, maybe sometimes called a super bust. Certainly in Canada, it's a super bust. Anyways, so think about them. These guys are paying a lot of taxes right now. Those guys are going to be paying taxes 10 years from now, and there's not very many of them. And so where are we going to get our money to support all these baby boomers who are going to be starting to cost society? So what do other countries look like? Well, here are some other nations in the world. And again, these are all statistics from the U.S. Census Bureau, and this is 2014 data. So India looks very, very strong in future. And in terms of their tax-paying base rate through here, the 35 to 55-year-olds, that's increasing and increasing and increasing over the next many years. And so there's not really a decline in their tax-paying base. That's a good thing for them. Brazil they're going to be good for the next quite some time, maybe the next 15, 20 years. However, 20, 25 years from now or so, their tax-paying base is going to start to decline. And so there's going to be costs on society there. Same thing with the European Union. Their tax-paying base is right through here. And so, yep, their tax-paying base is very strong right now. However, 10 years from now, it's going to start to decline rapidly. And infrastructure costs, road costs, hospital costs, things like that. Maintaining infrastructure, fewer and fewer and fewer people are going to be paying taxes. And so, yeah, that could be a problem. And everyone seems to think that China's going to take over the world. Probably not. If you look at their demographics are not actually that strong. They have a lot of taxpayers right now. However, they have quite a baby bust as well. And a little bit of an echo right there. And then a super bust, much like Canada has. So very similar demographics to Canada. So, yeah. Anyways, keep that in mind in future economy. And, yeah, it's just an interesting bit. All right, we'll do some more some other time. Okay, bye for now.